Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Robert, broadcasting, of course, from the Extreme Studios in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have from the Great Midwest One RDV joining me tonight here on the Extreme Movie Show. Tonight's movie, we want to go a little old school. We put this vote up to the general populace and all that too, and we came up with three different possibilities. Overwhelmingly, it was you guys need to review the Manchurian Candidate, which is a term that we hear a lot in the political atmosphere.
Yep.
RDV, this was a second or third watch. We have not watched this in a long time. I will start off by saying a couple things. You know, we always like to say on an Extreme Movie Show, we don't really talk about politics, good, bad. Otherwise, we talk about the movie, the TV show, the themes that we see, arguments for and against it, not serious saying it's our personal beliefs. That's your bullshit overall disclaimer about it, because the reason why we're saying that is the Manchurian Candidate on RDV. This is my initial take here, and I'll hand over to you. I know it's the first watch you. Frank Sinatra, I cannot tell you guys how big he was and for how long. Bigger than Elvis. I know people love Elvis. I'm not knocking Elvis. Loved Elvis too. This is one of Sinatra's best performances. He's not the greatest actor in the world, but he's very solid, very serious. He kind of eclipsed being Frank Sinatra in his film. This is a star-studded show that's very, very friggin' dark. And I've talked about movies like The Wizard of Oz, not even The Ninth Gate, but like Eyes Wide Shut being an inside look on society and all that stuff. And people are like, no, it's just a weird, shitty film. People never talk about Manchurian Candidate because when it came out, RDV in 1962-ish or whatever, it would be a year later that most people think the CIA and or Deep State had JFK assassinated because they were both banging the same women and all sorts of stuff and other things going on, a lot of mistresses and stuff. And Sinatra ended up basically having the rights to this film. And so as a teenager in the 80s, you know, we always say the Extreme Movie Show is 80s based. I remember some of the old stuff getting a second run, like Mission Impossible, Kung Fu, The Legend Continues, different things like that. And I remember my parents going, oh, the Manchurian Candidate, that's an interesting film. My parents would never, ever say interesting about something other than odd or weird. They would basically let me know what they thought. And when you watch this film, RDV, I'm getting ready to hand it here to you. A great film. Holy crap. It eviscerates both sides of the political spectrum. If you want to say that, if you want to say Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, I don't care what labels you want to put on it. Holy shit, it's not holding back on anything. I'm surprised a communist film got made because apparently JFK was all for it, so studios couldn't wait to get it done. Then they're like, oh shit, what did we do? And so a lot of weird stuff going on. And this is a heavy psychedelic kind of film. I'm not joking. Angela Lansbury steals the show, Miss Murder, She Wrote. Yes. It's a phenomenal film. Psycho Lady is in here, all sorts of stuff. First watch, gut level reaction. Give it to me.
First watch for me, having watched the reboot first with Leigh Schreiber and Denzel Washington, which I really did like. I was shocked to see that this got a higher IMDb rating than the reboot.
Why?
Well, because the reboot's really good, and after watching this, I still like the reboot better. Not to say this is a bad movie. This took a while. They actually get to the actual, action stuff in here. This is more of a drama.
Yes.
At first, it's a slow burning drama thriller. If anything, yes, Angela Lansbury, the Murder She Wrote girl, she actually did steal the show. And if it wasn't for her son, she'd be ruling the world, bro. Like, she was just that power hungry. And then you had her Patsy of our I guess, recently new husband that she wanted to put into the candidacy for being the president.
Yep.
This was also my first time watching a Frank Sinatra movie. I've never seen a single Frank Sinatra movie.
Okay. He's not bad.
I don't hate Sinatra. I was looking to see exactly what other movies he's done that maybe I've heard of.
Ocean's 11. That's a must watch.
I've never watched it. I didn't care for the remakes
Capers and Heists. Yeah, well, because they pale in comparison to the originals.
But I hope, like I said, I hope that's true, but I'm going through the rest of his stuff. It's like, I've never seen, never seen any of his stuff. From Here to Eternity, I heard that's a good one too.
Yes.
Never seen it. I know I said I've always I liked Frank as a singer, I'm not really as an actor. I mean, basing off of this role, I thought he did pretty well. But Janet Leigh, she stole the scenes every time she's in here. Just like we had Leslie Parrish whenever she was on.
Oh, she's gorgeous. Oh my
Oh my
God.
goodness. Yeah. Leslie Parrish is actually still alive.
Yes, she was a model and an accomplished musician as
Only a
well.
couple years younger than Janet Leigh, who sadly died back in the early 2000s.
Yes.
But Janet Leigh is also not a, and she's a name.
Yes.
Scream. Or I mean,
Yeah.
not Scream, but I mean Psycho, sorry.
Yes.
She's been in a few of those movies. She also was in The Fog, A Touch of Evil as well. So she's no stranger to, like, as far as popular movies. But going to this, it's like, man, I mean, one, I do love black and white movies. I do like this. We also get a younger Henry Silva.
Yes, I was gonna say Henry Silva's in it. Yes, he's so good.
So up until his point where him and Frank Sinatra fight, I gotta say it was kind of a boring movie to me. Now, let's say it's a bad movie. I'm just saying it was kind of like, I'm the action guy. I like action movies. I really don't like watching, slow moving, kind of slow burning movies.
You hate the slow burn.
Oh, it's just like, if I avoid the drama section. Whenever it blockbuster had drama, I was like, nope. Let's go to the action, sci-fi, western. I want a faster pacing movie. I love that kind of stuff. I like to get your adrenaline pumping. This is more like a slow burn, and but when it does get to the action points, it does pay off.
Yes,
I'll give it that. Laurence Harvey was a dick. His character was a dick the whole movie, and I love the fact that they even make light of that in here. He's like, because he was programmed to say, like, they give him the Purple Honor. This is the kindest person, or most gentlest, warmest person I've ever met, and they even make fun of that. But yeah, like I said, this had a lot of cool people in here too. I think, what's his name? The one that actually plays the patsy who's going to be the next president, James Gregory.
Yes,
he's another big name too. Like, there wasn't like
good looking big dude, great voice. John
McGiver, like you said, James Edwards. It's just like there's a lot of big names in here.
Which heavyweights.
Yeah, but overall, though, like I said, this would be a first time watch for me. I've heard mixed reviews. I heard people say it was a very fantastic movie. I heard people say it was kind of like, it's kind of slow burner. It's okay, I think it's more so the message than it is the movie itself. Like the whole conspiracy theory, take away the communist thing. It's just like, if somebody could brainwash our soldiers into doing stuff and planting in a false, puppet president, who knows? I'm not going to go in further.
Let me state this for the record about the film, the stuff that's getting into it, because you're bringing up really, I think, the key element to this thing. Is it a great film, or is the message what people remember for it? Yeah. And that's a very legitimate question. It's the $64,000 question for the movie. And so that's this. You have Angela Lansbury playing a woman that in the book was sexually abused by her dad, and here she's having incestual relationships with her son to get him programmed because she's a communist agent. So then that way he will literally shoot her now husband while he's in the middle of a speech at the end during the convention. Or shoot at him so that they can kind of get him elected because of that effect, and then declare like martial law so communists can take over by giving an anti-communism message. And I'm not making that up. It's not cute. It's not fanciful. But at the time in the 60s, the Cuban Missile Crisis going on. Yes. You didn't have anything in Hollywood except for you had the House Un-American Activities Commission, whatever it was called, where they basically said, hey, there's commies. We got to weed them out because they're infesting Hollywood. And Project Paperclip in the 40s took a lot of scientists and key people from World War II over here because America, we didn't have the technology that Germany was developing, where communism basically started maybe 100 years earlier, and it spread to China at that time and started to blow up, and to what would have been the Soviet Union at that time, which now is obviously different but still has it. And so there was this paranoia about it. And so some people like Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and some others said, hey, whatever somebody's political affiliation is, none of your business. We're here to make movies. The CIA at the time didn't like it. But then you also had J. Edgar Hoover, who was a cross-dresser that was investigating JFK and all that, and had dirt on everybody. So this was basically, we had our post-war boom in the 50s going to 60s, and things went to shit right around this time. And to have a movie like this dumped on the American public, to your point, RDB, and I think it's probably the best comment we're going to have tonight, the message of this movie, again, back in the early 60s, still relevant today, even more so, really, you could argue. Pretty damn powerful, I think. And I think that's why the first part of it that you said is not action-based. it sets it all up, because then you get the, okay, how is this going to play
It
out?
is needed, but I could have felt it could have been much shorter. I don't think there was that much exposition.
Yeah, Marania's bringing up gaslighting, because that term we hear a lot more now today in the general public. If I recall, Gaslight also had the Casablanca chicken. I want to say Humphrey Bogart as well, right? Because they would turn the intensity of they would turn the amount of gas going through and the lamp a little lower at night for something, and he would say, yeah, it's just you. It's not lower, or it's not on, or whatever. Gaslight is a trippy kind of term, but the thing with the Manchurian Candidate that you'll see in here is, and these are legitimate things. You saw this in a few movies like Eyes Wide Shut, where you talk about programming something. We see at the beginning of the film this team being led by Frank Sinatra, and the one guy, to your point, is a dick, and that's really a key element, because they get not ambushed, they get snookered by Henry Silva, somebody who they met along the way, and basically they captured, and then a couple of days later they go back in society. Some people are dead, and everyone describes, the dick as the most warmest, kindest, gentlest person I've ever known, which is complete bullshit.
And when Raymond Shaw here's that played by Laurence Harvey says, like, it's like everybody hated me. He says right to Sinatra, is like the character. He says, like, Ben, like, everybody hated me.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So it's like, because there's a scene in there when they're in the bar on fun. Who's the asshole that comes in and says, I don't approve of this, because the guys are at the bar hanging out with all the Korean chicks, and I was like, dang, it's not going to see why guys went to Korea.
Talk to me about your thoughts, because we've never really gotten deep. But what's your feeling or thoughts about? Because this movie was one of the first ones to really do it. If I just off the top of my head, I think about, but the whole mind control bit, because that's a legitimate thing that's been going on in the military for at least 100 years.
The mind control bit is something that actually does exist. They did it over in Russia. They've been doing this. They did this to their old soldiers and their citizens. So do you think it could never happen in America? Well, everybody thinks it's all fantasy. That's what this movie kind of woke people's eyes up. It's like, how can we trust our government? It's like, it was kind of like and I can see why there was so many mixed reactions about this, especially at a high time. They're in the 60s, the Bay of Pigs and all this stuff going on. It was really interesting. But because this spawned The Bourne Identity. All those movies with Matt Damon, brainwashing soldiers. We got awesome action movies out of this. So I'm thankful for this movie for that. But yeah, it is possible, and the Manchurian Candidates, at first I'm thinking like, hey, when are we going to get the Lee Harvey Oswald thing into this, because it kind of reminds you there, the whole JFK. Well, they said there's two shooters. Now look what happened to Trump. Somebody tried shooting him. People said there was multiple shooters. So it's like, oh my god, conspiracy tinfoil head. This movie does raise a good point though. It's like, you should never fully trust everything you see. Do your own research.
We've none of what you hear and only half of what you see, or whatever the old
whatever the phrase. But I thought it was interesting that they're trying to, because he's Ben, aka Frank Sinatra, was actually working with the army, because other people had the same dreams. I think the reboot, I don't remember him actually working with the army. I don't
recall. I saw a reboot, but I don't remember any of it.
I don't remember that part. I think in the reboot, he's actually Denzel Washington's character is on his own. And he's trying to convince Liev Schreiber, who is basically Laurence Harvey's character, and try to stop it. So that's kind of the reason why I think I liked it a little more, because he was more of like a one man going against, people are telling him no. I do. It's my first movie watching with any of these characters.
Yeah,
these actors. I think about it now. Lawrence Harvey. He wanted to be. He was actually a French, not a French, but he was what was his nationality again? He was a. I don't want to be a producer or director or something like that. After this, Jen Elaine. I'd never seen Psycho, but I know that she's in it.
Yeah.
Leslie Parrish was on a few different shows and stuff, movies. James Gregory. I was on a show for like 60 episodes. Forgot what it was called. Barney Fink.
Well, there's Barney Miller.
Barney Miller.
Yes.
Barney Miller. Yeah.
That was popular.
Yeah.
So
But
one of the things about this movie that's a little different is the fact that, to your point, about half of it, because it's over a 2 hour movie, it's like 2 hours, maybe 10 minutes.
well,
It's
it
a
was
long
2
movie,
hours.
and it feels
Yeah.
that way. You're getting a lot of the setup and the plot in the first part to it. Yeah, you get the execution of it towards the end, literally, no pun intended. But I think, to your point, when you mentioned the remake, you know, everyone wants to root for Denzel. Everybody loves Denzel. Will watch anything with Denzel in it, just like Russell Crowe, at least for me, right? But Denzel has that likability factor, and I think that what was interesting about Sinatra playing this role is you go, that's Sinatra, but he did it so good I didn't go, oh, that's Sinatra. Like Elvis is Elvis in every movie. Same thing with Sinatra. He's playing a version of himself. But here I thought he did a great job for himself acting. And when he gets to the point where we get the plot set up, like I say, Angela Lansbury is the evil genius behind all this, and she knows what's going on, and she's so incredible in her role here. She's beautiful, she's pretty, she's extremely talented. She's really known for her Broadway kind of stuff. I knew her from Murder, She Wrote. That was my first exposure. I thought that was a really fun show. She has a lot of energy and a smart wit about her, but she's fucking ruthless in this. She's not a bitch, but she's the alpha, and she knows it, and everyone else is going to know it, and you believe it. She's that good. And so it's amazing to me how she rules over her son and her wimpy ass husband. But here's the thing. Again, she's a communist, a commie plant, literally. And the whole story isn't so much about how she gets that way. Where I think the movie really shines for me isn't the angle or the acting or the players in it. I've said to you before that, like, we want to root for Denzel. We want to have, and to me, somebody you can root for. And here we start to kind of root for Sinatra because we get this convergence of him working for the military as he's come back because he's having like this nightmare and something's triggering it. And it's usually playing solitaire, and it's this card, not the Queen of Spades. Was it the Queen of Spades? The Queen of whatever. Queen of Diamonds, whatever. Should look that up, actually. But the thing is we start to see how he starts getting combined with the other people. And the one dude that's a dick, Henry Silva, shows up as the turncoat. So he's kind of like the guy that's hired to keep a watch of him. And so they have the fight and all that. And after that point, they start to reconnect. And this is where I think the movie shines, because you start to get a few flashbacks. Basically, you get Dickhead. You see him the summer before he went off to war and got hooked up with Sinatra. You see him how he fell in love with the girl. I think he got snake bit or something. She comes to rescue it, and then a daring shot
with a razor blade.
Yep, she has a razor blade because her daddy's a doctor, whatever the hell it was. She kind of like sucks the blood out or whatever, the venom from that. That's how you're supposed to treat a snake bite. She takes her shirt off, literally, just has this bra on, which is big for the 60s. She rides off on that, and she pulls it off by seeming totally innocent. And then he meets the husband, and they're liberals or whatever. But then you have the other angle, and I'm going to point out something specific too here, because there's layers of conspiracy in here. You already mentioned, RDV, Janet Leigh. The scene on the train where she meets Sinatra, where he's so nervous because he's had one of these visions. He's trying to like light a cigarette because everybody smokes, and you see it in here. He's like in between trains, and she's lighting up and they're having a conversation, and he's like, what does he say? Something like, well, Maryland's pretty. She's like, yeah, but we're in Delaware, or whatever, who says what. The point is you're like, is he tripping? Does it make sense? Is she an agent? I will point out to you that one thing that got brought up in Eyes Wide Shut, it's one of the few connections I can make to an older movie, is that Eyes Wide Shut, there's a scene where Tom Cruise gets introduced to a place where he goes to like buy masks for that sex ball that he's going to go to, right?
Yeah.
And in that shop, the storekeeper who does it has a very young, flirtatious, promiscuous young daughter that he basically tries to sell him. And then later on, it gets kind of weird with underage kid stuff. And so some people think that's what got Kubrick killed, was because he knew the whole pedo thing that some people brought up since then. I'm not trying to do a deep dive, but here's the thing. Usually when people are sexually abused by somebody, for some reason, and this goes back to Wizard of Oz and other stuff, they're blondes, platinum blondes. The bad woman and all the detective stuff back in the old days, whether it's Raymond Chandler, Philip Marlowe, and all that stuff, blondes. And it's not because blondes dominated the movie business. There was something about the sexual programming. They call it like a kitten or something. So there's all these weird terms of like butterfly and this and that, where like if you're a swinger, you may know about pineapples and different types of symbols, and the subculture get into it to kind of communicate with people, on the down low, so to speak. This movie almost has some stuff in like it, because it's interesting to see Sinatra basically follow him around, and yet he's falling in love with somebody, and it's like, Is Janet Leigh a plant, a controller? Is he himself compromised, but we don't know that yet? So you start questioning what's really going to happen here at the end, which is something, to your point, it's a very explosive ending, literally, but at the beginning, to your point, with the drama, they set all this up. And if this is not your type of movie, that's going to be lost on you. But it's all a deliberate build up to this point.
I gotta say, the most really kind of like disturbing thing is, when he kills the mascot. He's under as everybody's remembering this. We get this from the other guy who was Edwards, I think his name was, the other soldier in his units. Mm-hmm. Remembers more of it, and you see how, because first he remembers Shaw was ordered to basically to strangle, one of the guys in the units, and he strangled, and he's like, and the woman just says, sit down, be fine, relax, he just chokes him out. But then he goes up to Sinatra, and Laurence Harvey's like, can I, and he's basically told to give Laurence Harvey his gun, and he's like, thank you, sir. He's like, oh, thank you. And it's like, and then there's that brainwashed, and then he's like, now he was basically then forced to shoot the kid who basically wasn't. Remember, we're not allowed old enough to basically volunteer, but this kid somehow is, and he was just he's a short kid, and he was like considered the mascot. He's smiling. He's like, now shoot him in the forehead, and the kid smiles, and he shoot, and they show the blood matter.
Yep.
I don't remember the last time I've seen something like that in a movie where they actually show the brain matter go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, early 60s.
Wow. That it's gross but realistic. But yeah, the train scene with him, with the Sinatra, when he's in it, and then he starts talking to Eugeniline. Or go name Jenna.
Eugenially or whatever like that. Yeah.
Eugene,
an odd name.
It's
Eugenie, like Eugene, but it's Eugenie or something.
Eugenie Rose Cheney was her name, and you see him. They're outside there, and at first I thought like they're in between the cars and smoking, but you see there's glass between them, so it wasn't like completely open like the old trains. You could just smoke. They're in there just and smoke. She's smoking, and he's kind of just got his head. He doesn't want to look at her the whole entire time, and she's like basically just starts heading at him. I thought that was a little interesting. I was like, wow, she's just like.
So is she hitting on him? Because women generally don't do that. No, they send signals out and you're supposed to approach. That's why it's like, wait a minute, is she an agent?
And you see he's literally sweating. I thought that was really good acting by Sinatra with that.
I agree. It's a great scene.
Same with the fight scene he had with
Silva.
Yeah, Silva.
Well, Silva's a legit badass. Sinatra's 135 pounds soaking wet back then, 5'10" maybe. Seriously, great singer, crooner. I thought some of the stunt work, you and I talk stunt work, we do a lot of action movies here, right? Mm-hmm. For what it was not a bad fight at all.
No.
Forget what you say about the posing and the karate kind of stuff. That was relatively new, as in World War II and Korea, and then later on Vietnam, American soldiers would be exposed to martial arts, which are obviously prevalent, overseas. And so I had no problem with the karate stuff that they did in there.
Especially, they were you can't rule out in America there weren't Korean martial arts places. They were popping up in the 60s and 70s as well.
Yeah.
So, but I like that. The fact that it actually was believable. Sinatra got thrown hip tossed a couple times.
Yeah.
And then he did it. And then he did the same thing to Silva. And then see where he chopped. Oh my gosh,
that was really good.
when he chops the table.
Yeah.
I was like, oof. Like your hand's broken at that point. You're like, okay, I'll just use the other hand. It's like Deadpool. it's at that point. But no, I thought that was kind of cool because sometimes you see these big name celebrities, they don't want to take licks. They don't want to seem like they're a sucker. They want to be the hero, so they don't take punches. Or if they do take a punch, it's like a very unbelievable because their ego can't allow them. They actually take on a role where you're gonna get your ass kicked a little bit, you know. So I respect that. And Sinatra was more of a singer than an actor, right? You'd say, but
Sinatra was so popular as a crooner, but he specialized in an Italian style called bel canto that like the Rat Pack and others at the time were trained in, especially after the war. That was really popular on the radio. But the thing is they sang songs written by a group of people. They're typically referred to as like the American standards. So what happened is when Elvis got really popular and some people felt music was dumbed down to like just 2 or 3 or 4 chords and rhythm and blues and all that rock and roll stuff.
Yeah.
You've heard that from a different angle. Sinatra is like, I'm never doing that shit. Now, somebody like in the '60s, from overseas, like a Tom Jones would do all sorts of styles, country, rock and roll, R&B, whatever.
Yeah.
But Sinatra would do what he did, and he continued to do it, and he always had an audience, but he did want to get into acting, no doubt about it. So, yeah, he had his acting and singing periods, definitely.
Yeah, he did a lot of movies, but a lot of his songs were in his movies, though. So, I mean, yes.
Yeah, and the studio and all that system was different back then, too, compared to now.
No.
So, if you're really, really big like him and Elvis, that's what you did, right?
Well, yeah.
Humphrey Bogart would cut an album.
Why would I want to be in a movie and have somebody else singers? And if I'm a singer and I can sing and I'm a good singer, I'm gonna have my own songs in there, my own soundtracks. He did it his own way.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing about Frank. And Frank was probably bigger than any superstar. I mean, it's hard for me because I didn't grow up around Elvis's time. Obviously, he died relatively young, with all things considered.
Oh.
But the impact he had, I still think Sinatra's the much bigger superstar. I mean, it almost begins and ends with Sinatra when it comes to one of the greatest singers of all time. He's like almost too good of a singer that you can't tell. He's just that damn good. And he was able to kind of reinvent himself out and do some different things. But you were getting the Sinatra experience when you saw Sinatra.
Both are definitely popular. Even Dean Koontz referenced both of them in his Odd Thomas series, where basically you'd see ghosts and help them move on to the afterlife. You helped Elvis and you helped Sinatra. And it was kind of interesting to see that brought up in a supernatural setting. But no, these are. I would argue that Elvis might be more recently popular. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say. There's like I said, everybody has their own opinions. Doesn't mean we agree with them, but but I say I like both of them. I kind of feel like Elvis is dying down a little bit now too.
Yeah,
it's by popularity, but what do people remember him for? Like, what's the latest Elvis movie you can think? They did the Elvis movie here. You could say that he is still somewhat popular. They tried doing one with Tom Hanks. Well, I don't know if it was a commercial success, but are they going to do a Frank Sinatra one now? That's my thing. Is Elvis has been more recently in the media, where Sinatra's kind of sliding back, where it's. The last time I remember him being referenced in anything was Spider-Man, the comic books in the 60s, 70s.
Sinatra's in Cannonball Run. He was still very popular in the 80s and all that too. Yeah. I would argue that Elvis, of course, we saw Bubba Hotep. We talked about John Carpenter's big TV movie Elvis with Kurt Russell. It's what really put him on the map, not the Eyes of Laura Mars. I think it was before Halloween or maybe right after. So Elvis was starting to die off, I would say, in the 90s.
I want to shout out that Sinatra or Eric Breen here. Just mentioned that Sinatra, Elvis, Beatles are the big three. But for how long before today's society, with all the new music stuff, they realize
Sinatra.
Once the older people,
Elvis, a couple of decades. The Beatles, not even a decade. But
I mean, though, how long before
musicians?
How long before today's Zoomers and all this stuff and everything else don't listen to that and don't buy it anymore? Once we all start dying out, it's like the action stars. How long before no one even talks about them anymore? Hopefully these guys, hopefully the Beatles, Elvis, Sinatra, Dean Martin, all those guys, Jerry Lewis, all those guys.
It's all Sinatra.
Like I said, I hope they all continue to be passed down. This movie is in the Criterion collection.
Yes.
I wonder how many Elvis actually think about now. How many more movies?
They're going to say Blue Hawaii and a few other ones. But, for Elvis.
But I'm always shocked to see when I watch a movie, it's this is a Criterion collection. I guess you could say that this qualifies for Criterion because it's a very topical subject.
It also wasn't available to watch until the late 80s. Yeah. It literally did not show, even though it came out in 62. Basically after 63 or 64, whatever the date was, 62. When Sinatra had the rights or whatever like that, when JFK was assassinated, it was hey, let's out of respect for Sinatra, because I'm telling you, Sinatra had that level of pull. He's got more. He has as much pull as Elon Musk, I would say, if not more.
It's kind of like
had more money.
It's kind of like when 9/11 happened. We're not supposed to talk about it anymore because it was offensive. It's weird how some people have certain pull or certain things. That I said, every time I see the Twin Towers in any older movie, I'm surprised it hasn't been edited out. especially with today's society with cancel culture. We edit,
It's some older
everything.
things that is happening, and that's the
Yeah.
whole thing. So, like, we haven't heard anything about some of the school shootings where they, after the thing, they've, literally demolished the school and built another one.
Right.
You've got the current Trump assassination, which nobody's really talking about, where the next day, literally, they cleaned up the entire site while the investigation was still going on. There's all the second shooter evidence going on. So the conspiracy stuff that everyone got yelled at for years, whether it's legit or not, is out there, whether it's Epstein, whether it's Pizzagate, whether it's 9/11, whether it's the chemtrails, whether it's all that stuff. A lot of people like to joke and say that Alex Jones was right, because him and a few other guys would talk conspiracy stuff late at night. And again, the Manchurian Candidate, to kind of put in perspective, early 60s, your point about this stuff being done over in Europe, like in Russia, is true, because the whole super soldier thing after World War I, when you talk about your Rothschilds, your Vanderbilts, your couple key players there, your Freemasons, all that stuff, the Illuminati and all that, Bohemian Grove and everything, it's been around for a very long time, where all the money shifts, the real power players. Trying to make a super soldier is where most of our drugs got made, trying to make a super soldier so they wouldn't have to sleep. Sleep analysis was a big thing. Sexual and food deprivation or whatever was a big thing. This movie only touches just a little bit of it, yet it's so shocking because you're not seeing them getting beaten and raped and tortured and all that stuff for the most part. It's only hinted at, but that's what made it kind of creepy. It's like, fuck, they really got into this guy's brain. What's going on here? And then the fact that there's certain triggers, it's not a goofy thing like it's been lampooned in certain things. This was like, what the fuck is this? There was nothing like this out at the time.
This also makes me think of the movie Shooter. Other than that thing with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, I mean, you can sense it coming from a mile away, right? I mean, seriously, it doesn't. But if not for this movie, you'd be like, oh, fuck, they got him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so I did like this, and like up until the very end, like they show him, like, when he's running the scaffolding, and you see him putting the gun together and all this stuff, and like, this isn't the first time I've seen stuff like this. I saw that was what the other Mission Impossible, where the girl was gonna take out of the flute, she was gonna turn it and shoot somebody, like. But this, and then, like I said, the suspense, him running up the Sinatra, running up the flight of stairs, getting there, and then trying to stop, Laurence Harvey from. They thought it was going to shoot the actual guy, the other candidate, but instead, the last minute, he shoots his mom, and then he shoots the other guy. It's just like, or she shoots the other guy first. The guy he hates, his stepdad, and then shoots his mom, and then he shoots himself. And it's like, oh my! It's like, oh. What that is
the guy was a dick the whole time, and then he finally
he says
the right thing.
He says, "The reason I didn't tell you about this because I knew you tried to stop me, pretty much. It's like this has to end. It's like I was like, yeah." But everybody jokes about it. It's like Angela Lansbury, if not unchecked, could have took over the world.
Well, they always say behind every man's, a scheming woman, and that's kind of what they mean, is because men do stuff for women. That's how people will argue, culturally speaking, that how societies get made and all that stuff. So that may sound, a little triggering to some people, but no. I think the plotting and planning nature of a woman to make sure certain things happen is an interesting take, because the movie mentioned earlier, Gaslighting, with Ingrid Bergman in it, I think from 38 or 39, I think it was before Casablanca. It was right around then. It was pretty interesting because that's where the term gaslighting comes from.
Did you notice well, enough about the story mode. Did you notice like certain things about the movie, like the setting and scenery stuff? Like, you notice in the very beginning of the movie when they show, like, they're at the Korea, they show the flag. It has 50 states on there, on stars, when it's only supposed to be 48 at the time. Did you notice a goof on that? It was 1952. So they're like, and it wasn't until later until Hawaii. Yeah.
Hawaii wasn't until after 52?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hawaii,
but what about, her husband, who's a cuck, who's basically an imbecile, right?
You know what he reminded me of? He reminded me of Frank from MASH.
Okay, I've never watched MASH, so I understand.
He was the guy who was always chasing after whatever, the nurse, the hot nurse everybody liked,
Right.
Yeah.
So did you notice that her husband dressed up as an older president? Did you catch that?
Abraham Lincoln, yeah.
And there was pictures of Abraham Lincoln. What happened to Abraham Lincoln in Ford Theater?
Got shot.
Whacked. Yeah, Reagan hadn't gotten whacked yet, or the attempts for Trump.
But
I just thought that's kind of interesting, because what they do is at the dinner party, that kind of where Angela Lansbury sets it up to reveal the plot that we see happens is,
yep.
She's basically tells her son, because she's fucking with his brain, oh, I thought we'd invite, whatever her name is, Leslie Parrish's character,
Jocelyn, yeah.
because of the harsh way that you treated her and all that. I'm looking at her going, you Murder, She Wrote bitch. Damn, you're good. Damn, you're so good.
Because she was she's like, because I remember like the scene where she's talking to the other guy, her husband, over, and she's like, you know what? I think it's time for our son to get married. He's like, what?
Yep.
He's laughing, and she's like, what's so funny? He's like, it's like as if you'd allow him to marry anybody. He's like, well, there was that one nice girl. It's like, oh, you mean the communist tart? Just making fun of her. He's like, oh, I was wrong back then.
Because across the lake, they were a liberal family.
And that
didn't like was a commie.
And at that point, I realized that not even her step-husband knew that she was communist. I wonder what he was under. If he was under some triggering as far as brainwashing. Yeah, that was her. That was actually by herself. She was playing everybody as a fool. And as Eric brought up to me, another interesting fact is Eric brought up to me is the fact that Angela Lansbury was only 3 years older than Laurence Harvey in this movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But you wouldn't know unless you read that, because he was playing him. He actually looked young, but they must have did something. Maybe put a wig on her or did makeup or whatever. She looked and she acted.
The way she dressed with the pearls in her hair up and all that, she dressed like a classic sophisticated lady. Yeah.
But because normally when you see like high school plays, you've got the kids or the coolers, and she dresses the old and all. It's like, who are you trying to fool? No. But this actually looked really good for that. Just the whole scenery, the whole setting, as far as people lighting cigarettes, people smoking indoors. It's just
they're looking at all the pictures, and you can see all the cigarette smoking room. Like, oh, I remember all those days. I can smell that room right now.
In the room where they has the guy, the Russians and the Chinese in there, the communists in there. Mm-hmm. The one guy, the bald guy, comes on, stocky guy. He's got the big old glasses on. I'm like, it's always that guy in a movie. Mm-hmm. I love that he's got the mustache, but then he's talking. Then they go into the war whenever they're in the war room with Frank Sinatra and that's the army guys, and then they show stuff. It's like I love that the setting behind it, the map, the world map and everything. Just like I love war rooms in older movies like this, Yeah, and then just watching like Frank Sinatra wearing the coat and like. I don't really watch a lot of movies where the guys have the military uniform on, dress uniform. Mm-hmm. So you see him where he's wearing the army coat, and it's just like it looks like a girl's coat because it doesn't cover his butt. It's right above his butt. It's almost like his waist, the way it ends. Where
I think that was the style of the military at the time. That kind of cut.
Yeah. So I said the scenery here is good in here too. Whenever we reviewed the Chuck Norris movies, I always tell you like, look at San Francisco. Look how nice it was.
I know.
So this is New York, and. Do you notice in New York there was no crime?
Yeah, a lot of things happened in the 60s. And some people argue that, communism in general basically started mid-1800s or whatever, kind of migrated to Russia, then went over to China around turn of the century, and that's where China had its own issues because China was not a communist country until after, say, World War I, let's say, for the most part, and that's why those people went to Taiwan, and then these people, then Britain had islands over there with Hong Kong. Like I said, we try not to be political about movies because that's not what we're here for.
No.
But I know the movie because at the time, to your point, it was basically America does not like communism. World War II, you could argue with other people go, well, Hitler and what he did, and that's it. And that really degrades it because there's a lot of moving pieces on the chessboard, literally. The guy, Joseph McCarthy, that basically helped win all that stuff there too. A lot of people didn't like him when he came back. Same thing with Churchill when he went back to Britain. At that time when Churchill went away, a lot of commies infiltrated Britain. You see where Britain is today. You have the European Union trying to get together. Now they're not. And so all the stuff that we hear and say political stuff is going back hundreds of years and all that. And it simplifies it by saying, you could say communism good, capitalism bad, or vice versa. That's not what we're saying. But the movie does a great job of just simply saying, this is what has to happen to break down a society. This is how it affects people. Doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, libertarian even, which they don't even talk about in here. But it was so different when this movie came out that, like I say, what the hell is going on? And
everybody was afraid. Everyone was afraid of this.
Well, because communism is evil because you come in there and they control everything, and then you don't have America went from nothing, and even though England had the Industrial Revolution, they started having some monetary issues and other things too. And in that short period of time, all of a sudden America had the greatest growth of any nation at that time, especially with how young it is. because of a lot of things too. A lot of countries didn't like it. So if you're hardcore second, third generation American or coming over to be a part of that, you're like, no, we know what's possible in America. We don't want to get commies over here to get that going. That's simplifying it, but that was the whole joke about Angela Lansbury in here. Everybody should like, oh, that's a commie. Oh, that commie across there. And that's what it was. People did not like it. I even know in older comic books and over TV shows, they'll mention the commies and Ruskies and all that stuff there too, because they're trying to point them out. That's evil compared to, what we have over here. A lot of people don't like America because of all that. Yeah. Really, it's a jealousy thing.
Well, I'm just looking at the shows that are coming on after this. You had Mission Impossible. I don't know if the Avengers were around the time. A lot of spy shows, Secret Agent Man.
Yes.
So people were, you could say a lot of people were eyes were woken up there. Like the
same.
What was always been fantasy could actually be reality. So I could see why this movie was basically kind of like heavily criticized, especially by the government. I wouldn't be surprised back then if the government's saying, "Oh, this."
The government's had so much influence on Hollywood; it's not even funny.
Yeah. So, like I said, I can imagine why they're like, "Oh, this is horrible. This and all this stuff." But you think about it, like how easy would it be for somebody to infiltrate our country and actually start, work its way up, and then they could build a network. It's like if we've done in other countries. So I mean, like I said, I can see why this was a big, like, very controversial movie at the time when it came out, and a lot of people were kind of like, some people probably said this is hogwash, this is just a disgrace of movies, but there are people saying like they could see, they start connecting the dots, it's a very, very taboo, and then especially for those who went and read the book afterwards too. Like the book was even more messed up. You said the incest was implied in the book, not in the movie.
No, it's implied in the movie. They have sex in the book.
I didn't see it in the movie. I didn't hear that part. But I mean, in the book, they had the sex scene. Yeah.
Where does she kiss him? On the lips.
Yeah.
That's an intimate gesture, not I'll put my arms around your shoulders.
I thought it was just her just being weird, but
it's there. Just like you said, when Janet Leigh was hitting on Sinatra, absolutely, especially by 60 standards. That's not even blinking red lights. Come talk to me. Come hither. Look, that's I'm devious. I'm up to something kind of look. You should always be wary about that. But it's interesting because, like I say, a lot of women in the film, a lot of men. It's a great cast. I will say this for my final thoughts.
Yeah,
I agree with what you said at the beginning. I think that was just the whole idea was well said. It's really more about the message of the movie rather than the movie itself. Although the movie itself is a very good movie. If you really like films, I think you owe it to yourself. If you take films even a little bit seriously or wonder where things come from, this is a movie that, whether you like it or not, it's worth a watch. We could sit and argue about, well, the Beatles were overrated or not great musicians. Well, we're talking about the impact they had. The same thing with Sinatra, or Jimi Hendrix was overrated as a guitarist because he used a lot of pedals, didn't really play the blues, and people like yell and scream, well, he did. Whatever. I mean, we have reasons to think what we do. But that's, to your point with the Manchurian Candidate, the fact that it came out, had a lot of stuff to say that was different. President gets assassinated. Nobody really sees the film for 20 plus years. So basically, that a lot of people who didn't see it at the time missed out on it. New generation sees it. You get your conspiracy stuff starting to happen in the 70s and 80s with late night talk radio, which was becoming a phenomenon at that time. It was not always the thing. And that's something that's never going to go away. And it's a healthy thing. It allows us to kind of like, yeah, are we really getting aliens? Is Area 51 a really thing? We goof on it with stuff like the X-Files, but then when you take a little bit seriously and you realize there is an element of truth to a lot of things that happen there. This is all legitimate stuff. Brainwashing, mind control programming. It's in advertising, all that stuff. It's legit. It's a great film. It's not a film I would go back and watch over and over again. No chance in hell.
I agree with you.
Dark. It's too serious.
Yeah, like I said, this movie, it does pique the human interest and it does things that we're not allowed to know or probably should not know. As far and I know about aliens. Yeah, you're right. Area 51. It's a military secret testing ground, basically that we don't know what goes on there. But then again, all these kooks and people say whenever someone doesn't like, they can't know something, they make the first thing they do. They make up lies about somebody because they're doing something bad in there. Well, they don't know unless you actually have proof. And good luck showing it, because there's a reason why government should be fully transparent. There are some things that they do. Doesn't mean they're evil. It's just that if we're testing if you're testing a new weapon, you don't want your enemies getting a hold of schematics.
They have it already.
Yeah. Well, now
I'm telling you.
I'm saying back then. I'm not talking about now. Yeah, you can say you can, but I mean, like, yeah. So there's always going to be people who's going to say stuff about somebody else because because that's just the way we are a gossip loving humanity.
I almost thought for a flashing brief second in a moment of complete stupidity that when Trump was elected, we just might get a taste of some of those juicy JFK files, and then he reneged on it. I thought we might get something on the Epstein logs.
Epstein logs.
I could go on and on and on. You're never gonna get it.
The Epstein logs, the most guarded secret ever, file in LL files in the government. The rest of them, here you go in the countries. We don't care.
John McAfee, he was an interesting fellow. He was on a lot of alternative podcasts. Yeah. They got him whacked. He had body doubles. He was talking about that years before anybody said that about Joe Biden. Joe Biden was clearly on drugs, in my opinion, on some of the speeches he gives because his mental state. And none of this should be a surprise to anybody that's got half a bit of rationality. No. Again, whether you're pro this or pro that or anti that, it's just that's the world we live in. And once you get to a lower standard, it will never go back up. That's why we're in interesting times, and which makes the movie Manchurian Candidate, especially for its time in 1962, so prescient. It's the first time this stuff was revealed culturally to the general public, and it's not going to go away. You got to give it a lot of credit for that. I have to say that.
Like I said, the reason I listed everybody in the actual cast on there because these people are important in the movie. Like I said, because normally you just list the top 3, but they all did a wonderful job in here too. They only in some of the posters they only just Frank Sinatra, Laurence Harvey, and Janet Leigh. They don't even list Angela Lansbury in the top 3. I thought that was interesting. I was like, really? It's like she is an important character of the whole movie.
Yeah,
but
you're not getting Billy over. Yeah. Nobody is. Any other final thoughts?
But that being said, this can never happen because is Eric right? The government is our friend. Support our government. And subscribe down below and to support our government and our channel. And I love. Did you notice that when he gets an argument, he still salutes the guy's like, I gotta freaking salute him back. I pop for that. He's like, because he's like, that's the most like you get an argument. He's superior. He's like, that's the most dickish thing you can say back. He's like, well, I'm gonna salute you.
I don't want to say the Manchurian Candidate is a significant film. I mean, it might be for certain things. It's interesting. I don't know if it's important, but again, if you consider yourself any sort of person that spends 1% of your brain analyzing films and patterns and things like we do here in Extreme Movie Show, talking about things have changed from the 80s to 90s, all the different decades and feels that we do, is even television and all that. We like to kind of get in that and compare it because it's kind of interesting because, you got me, the 80s kid, you the 90s kid, and Pixel, the young 20-something kid, the aughts. So 3 different generations of viewpoints on here, as well as the audience members, as well as the people overseas that give us But like I said at the beginning here, and I want to say thanks to everybody that showed up tonight as we're wrapping up. This is by far the most popular pick over the Thomas Crown Affair, which nobody seems to want to watch, the original one with Steve McQueen, and The Hustler, which is one that we have been talking about on the show because that's a great movie as well. So I want to thank everybody for participating in the poll, or the people showing in tonight there. Of course, everybody that retweets us, let us know they exist, spending time with us is great. Again, we try not to get too political or whatever, or I don't think, RDV, you and I have ever said we belong to this particular party or not, or these are our beliefs.
No, but about
what's present. This is by far the most political type of episode I think we'd ever do because it's only pertinent to the movie itself.
The only thing I said about this, you could say that Joe Biden is a puppet and Angela Lansbury basically Jill is his wife. And
I did not say that, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I'm just saying you could make comparisons. If Hunter Biden turns out to be the Manchurian Candidate's son. So, like I said,
you could say they whacked Joan Rivers too for what she had to say about somebody else's wife, but I'm not even going to mention on here because I'm sure the algorithm.
But like I said, whatever your politics are, like this is something to open your eyes up, because don't just think. I'll just say this: don't think that everything is on the up and up. If you believe that, you may have a happy life until you wake up and you realize that there's a reason why you've been a patsy so long because you've been conditioned little on.
Oh, I do have one announcement that I wanted to make to everybody now that you're here, RDV. Next week, the young 27 Professor Pixel's got an engagement, a function he's got to go to, so he's going to be out. So you and I may do something, I may do something. We'll see what happens. The week after that, we're going to continue doing our Forever Night television show, the 800-year-old vampire who's sensitive. We might be doing that offline or moving it to another night. We're going to actually go back to doing Columbo season 2 because it was so there was so much positive feedback and response from it. It was one of our most engaging shows that we've had. So we're going to figure out a way to be live with that in 2 weeks from now, starting with season 2. We'll make that announcement out there on our Twitter line. And we'll still be doing For Every Night as well, because that's picking up a little bit of steam well, and that's a fun show we like doing. So, I want to, like I say, thank everybody for participating in the poll. Guys, if you have suggestions, I know RDV makes comments about that. Sometimes we're trying to get more engagement with the polls. Be on the lookout for that. But we have a lot of fun bringing this up there, too, because that's what we do. And we'll talk about them whether you guys are here or not, because we enjoy it, too. And Manchurian Candidate, overall, you got the last little bit here, RDV.
I'll just say this: if you guys want to see other movies that were on the poll, leave a comment down on the actual posts. We probably will do The Hustler sometime, because that was also the second most popular one in the poll. But we're going to start doing this on Tuesday nights. We're going to put up 3 movies in a poll. So be sure you check out the community tab, because we're going to let you guys vote on what we're going to do on Sundays as far as movie reviews. So thank you all for being here.
Good night now.
We'll see you on Tuesday night. Go vote.